Serious question. What unexplained memories do you have from your childhood? At a roller skating rink when I was about 12, I was just rolling towards the rink after getting food and suddenly I felt a prick on my right arm. I looked back and saw a woman holding a long needle-like object, so I stopped and asked what the hell, and the lady said body fat test and then hightailed it out of there. The employees were all 17-year-old stoners, so by the time I got anyone's attention, the woman was gone. I have been in the military and therefore tested for tons of illnesses and diseases which confirmed I wasn't given random AIDS or something. But to this day, I still have no fucking clue what happened. Edit. There are a lot of replies with similar getting poked with sharp object stories. Sleep tight, Reddit. Well, obviously she gave you a body fat test. Occam's razor strikes again. No, it was a needle, not a razor. Pay attention, dude. Occam's razor is the theory that the most obvious theory is usually the most probable one if you don't know what's going on. It's likely that she was mentally ill and thought she was doing a body fat test, or giving you some disease, or stealing your DNA or something. It's also possible that she was legitimately trying to infect you with some blood-borne illness, but failed to do so because the chances of transferring something via needle is still slim, especially when the original material isn't fresh, i.e. dried blood. That's the only thing I can think of in retrospect. Well, nothing cropped up yet, and I'm knocking on 30 soon, I guess. I will hope for the best. That's weird. When I was in 6th grade, I was one of the crosswalk helper dudes. An old Asian guy in scrubs grabs my arm and stabs me with a hypodermic needle. I went to the nurse, police were called, I was taken to the hospital and stabbed by other concerned individuals wearing scrubs until they determined I was free of diseases. Turns out the guy was a janitor to the hospital. He stole the scrubs and syringe and pickled up his grandson from school every day wearing the scrubs. On several occasions, before the scary dude, he would walk away from me saying, "I brain surgeon, I brain surgeon." Police found him. Parents pressed charges and the guy went to prison for 7 years. This was in 99, so he's somewhere out there now, probably pretending to be a psychiatrist. No, wait. A physicist. I think that's what it says. I vaguely recall being smuggled into a drive-in movie in the trunk of a car. This is totally consistent with my dad's behavior, so I'm pretty sure it actually happened. Weirder, though, is that I think the show was a porno, and there was a scene with an old west stagecoach and a guy doing something with the chick's vag. Years later, the scene seemed to match up with the scene in Deep Throat where the guy was blowing bubbles in there, but the stagecoach thing didn't match up. I have no idea what that's about. Maybe it was Barbalina? I vaguely remember a scene with some strange sled or stagecoach thing, and I'm pretty sure there were bubbles in it. I thought you'd bite me right, so I copied the parental content advisory from IMDb. For those that don't know, this is an extremely detailed, factual account of all the sex, violence, and gore, profanity, and drug use in the movie. I'm not going to read through all that. I had some long-haired 17-year-old kid from down the road and his girlfriend babysitting me around age 6 or 7. I remember we were sitting in the living room and, referring to his girlfriend, the guy said to me, "Do you want her to suck your dick? She'll suck your dick if you want. Hee. Come on, she'll do it." I don't remember how I responded exactly, but what if I'd said yes? What if I told my parents? What the fuck was that guy thinking? It was nearly 18 years ago and I still remember it. If he had said yes, this guy probably would have just laughed, nothing would have happened. Not trying to defend him, but a lot of 17-year-olds think shit like that is funny. If the guy's normal, he probably regrets it by now. That's what I kind of assumed. Okay, once upon a time, I was at a family friend's house and went to the toilet. For some reason, I decided to open the lid of the box part of the toilet. What's it called? And for some reason, there was a large live crayfish in there just chilling. I can actually explain that. In areas that have a large amount of pollen in the air, algae can form in the upper tanks. When I was a kid, you'd flush and there'd be green line where the water enters the bowl. I've heard of people using goldfish to keep it clean. Crayfish also work and are easy to catch. Oh. So people would rather have live crayfish in their toilet than green slime? That's an odd trade-off. There is a third option of cleaning the tank regularly, although I doubt many people use that option. Like a fucking savage? No thanks. Back when I was 6 or 7, I lived at a different house than I do now. My mom tucked me into bed like normal night, but when I woke up, I was in a very tight place. It was pitch black, I couldn't see, and I felt very cramped. I started screaming for help. After what seemed like 5 minutes of screaming and some crying, something jerked whatever I was in, and I heard a zipping noise. I then saw my dad's face looking down at me. I was inside a freaking suitcase. It turns out I was in a suitcase under the guest room's bed. There was no one sleeping. No one in my family knows how the heck I ended up there or why it even happened. It's not just a weird dream or something, because my family still brings it up sometimes. Completely weird. Still know how it happened. Too long, didn't read. Woke up in a suitcase. Do you have an older brother by any chance? No, I don't. Well, that makes it way harder to explain. Sleepwalking, perhaps? I once woke up inside my fridge when I was 5 or 6. I haven't told anyone this, but here goes. I was around 8 at the time and went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night to go poop. I fell asleep on the toilet, and when I woke up, the entire bathroom was covered in this red liquid. It wasn't blood. The consistency was more like cocktail sauce. I was scared that I somehow did it, so I spent like an hour cleaning off everything until the bathroom looked normal again. I went back to bed and forgot about it. I thought it was a dream, but then a few days later, my mom was holding up a pair of my shorts, the ones I was wearing that night, and I had been covered in that liquid, and I couldn't explain why. For clarification, I'm a guy, so it most likely wasn't a period. Maybe you got sick and threw up? Yeah, puke is the most likely explanation. Online doctor here. It's obviously ectoplasm. Fell asleep on the toilet. Most likely barked. Falling asleep on a toilet even at the age of 8 is pretty difficult. Probably fainted, and nausea is common when fainting. If you hadn't had some food poison, it kind of explains the entire situation. Okay, yes, a lot of people fall asleep on the toilet. Since this is getting so much attention, what the fuck, I might as well mention that this is a thing. It happened to me and I took a pretty nasty fall as a result. Be careful out there, folks. Wikipedia, nutrition signal, I'm not gonna go to that. I have a fuzzy memory of my foot being stuck in the toilet. Sock on, foot wedged in the hole, no idea why I did that or how I got out. I remember flying backwards as a very young kid and hitting the wall. I remember it actually didn't hurt, but also remember slumping down and saying to myself not to raise my head. Decades later, my older cousin told me my dad got mad at me during a family gathering and threw me against the wall. My grandparents told my dad he'd kill him if he ever struck me again. Wow. When I was 3 or 4, I remember suddenly waking up at the bottom of my parents' pool, which was 9 feet at the deep end. When I woke up, I just remember looking up and seeing the sun coming through the water. Then suddenly it went dark and I was being pulled up to the top. It was my mom saving me. I don't remember how I ended up at the bottom of the pool, but I was, and apparently almost died. Ooh, my earliest memory is almost drowning too. I think I was like 2 or 3 though. Maybe 3 or 4. She threw you in while sleeping, then changed her mind. I have a slimmer memory of looking up through water. What happened was I slipped off a dock and fell under the water. I couldn't swim, then I was very young. Maybe you didn't really wake up, your memory just started after you'd fallen in. I didn't mean memory as in her ability, I remember mine. I was riding my bike around the pool and I fell in. And I remember I couldn't swim, I had the bike next to me, and then that's the end of it. I don't remember anything else after that. But the fact that I'm alive today means they got me out. I had a memory years ago of being in an Arabic-feeling country. In someone's house, my mother was trying on a sari. But I remembered it with great deal of fear. Decades later, not long before he died, I asked my father about it, and he delivered. We traveled to Tunisia. This had to be around 1968, and we'd ended up with an invitation to dinner at some rich person's house. My mother was very outgoing and used to end up talking to all sorts of people. My father, too, come to think of it. The scene took place as I had described it, but neither my father or I knew was that the host was running his foot up and down my mother's leg under the table all throughout dinner. My mother, who often described herself as stupid but was in fact nothing of the sort, growing up in the 40s in Australia wasn't a good time for women, did not react. My father had a temper. It would have gone very badly. As my father said when he told me this was Tunisia in the 60s. If a few tourists had vanished or been found dead in an alley, there would have been no consequences. She totally pulled it off. Mom was kick-ass. They've both been gone for 20 years and I still miss them almost every day. It's sad. I have this weird memory of completely losing the ability to speak one day. Like, I was 4 or 5, and suddenly I couldn't speak at all, no matter how hard I tried. I was terrified and tried to indicate to my siblings that I couldn't speak, but I was the oldest and they didn't really understand. I went to find my mom, who was outside, and tried to show her, but she didn't really understand what I was doing either. I just remember this feeling of total helplessness and fear. I went back into the house and just sat on the couch all night. The next day I was fine. I have no clue what that was, or even if it's a real memory or not. None of my family remembers. Apparently, this is more common than I thought. I did hit my head pretty hard when I was a kid one time in particular. I would almost bet this is related. I used to often have that kind of dream. I was trying to speak to my parents, but no sounds got out. I was trying to run after someone, but I was really, really slow. I was trying to punch someone, but somehow ended up petting them. I'm not saying your memory is a dream, but it made me think of that kind of dream I had often as a child. Ooh. My father died when I was 3 years old. I vividly remember walking to the bed where he lay after he died, seeing his purple face with the dribble of the chicken soup my mother was trying to get him to eat still running down the left side of his face. I remember not crying, just being very confused. Then I walked out of the room and went to my bedroom and watched Power Rangers. To this day, my mother, who does not lie to me, adamantly maintains that she had a neighbor take me to their house as soon as my father began to pass away, and that I never saw him like that. She says that by the time I got back to their house, the room had been shut and locked for a while. The rest of my siblings attest to this, but my memory persists. Nobody ever told me what the man looked like when he died, let alone that he was aspirating chicken soup when it happened. I have no idea where the memory comes from, but that's the point of this thread, so there you go. Edit. I have spoken to my mom about this multiple times, and she has told me that I described what I had seen to her days before she was able to talk to anyone about it. It is possible that it is a fabricated memory from overhearing others, but I find the unlikely since I spent most of the next few days with neighbors who were very careful not to talk in front of the children about what happened. Thank you to everyone for the stories. It's a nice and a sort of morbid way to be able to share this memory and experience with others. I have a similar memory. I remember seeing my granddad in the funeral home after he passed. I was about 5 years old. I spoke to my aunt, who was with me at the time of the visit recently, and she also denies that any of the young children were allowed to see him and that we were all left at home. I had always thought that memory as my last moment with him, but I don't know if it actually happened. I have a vivid memory of laying on my living room floor. I must have been around 10, and stressing about how I was a lesbian and how would I tell my parents and that I'd never have children. I remember thinking to myself, I'll have to deal with this later. Got up and carried on my life. Only just remember this a year ago. Not a lesbian. What? Same thing happened to me. I was kind of a late bloomer, not interested in boys at the same time my friends were. The only logical conclusion, therefore, was that I was a lesbian. I had gay cousins and family friends, so I figured my parents would be cool with it. But I just never got around to actually telling my parents. Then a few years later in high school, I caught up to everyone else, and turns out I'm not a lesbian after all. Is that a thing? I remember the moment my parents explained homosexuals to me. They're boys who like boys and girls who like girls, they say. I like boys. No, they like them. Oh. When I first signed up for Facebook, I put that I was interested in making friends. So under interested in, I put both men and women because I wanted to be friends with both. Soon after, I noticed my friends only wanted to be friends with girls. That's when I realized that the section was for. I remember at the daycare when my mom would leave my sisters and I would be taken alone downstairs to a basement. I had a recurring nightmare and night terrors all through my childhood of this, but that's all I can remember. The part where I get taken downstairs. Something similar happened when I was a child. My brother, sister, and I all went to the same home daycare for a time when I was around 4 years old. I hated going because it was awful. The caregivers were mean. So I would cry and throw a fit until my mother decided to just leave me with my granny. Well, I find out a few years ago that there were adults there who molested my sister during nap time. She tells me I was there and I knew about it, but I don't have any memory of anything like that. Green lightning bolts. Once, when I was 6 or 7, I was riding in the back of my aunt's car, gazing out the window. All of a sudden, a large green lightning bolt flashed before my eyes. I have never seen another green lightning bolt, and to this day, I've never found an explanation for it. Ooh, a video for green lightning bolts. My parents are constantly rewriting our family history. They just pretend things never happened. So I'll bring up some childhood memory and they try to convince me it never happened. I'm fully grown and now I never talk about my childhood because of dealing with that. So the majority of my childhood was all BS. There's actually a term for this. They are gaslighting you. For people that experience this, you're not alone. Look at all those responses. Internet hugs. My parents do this. I was severely depressed in 8th grade and was failing all my classes. They find out, bitch at me to change it. I work hard, get a 2.5 GPA. They are embarrassed, so they say, this never happened. Ex-husband was abusive, and they demanded I stay with him because I was married. Divorce his ass because abuse, and it never happened. Had cancers 2 years ago, cured it in 8 months. It never happened. Sister has 3 different kids with 3 different dads. Divorced twice, cheated on both husbands. Abortions galore. Engaged again. She's perfect. None of that ever happened. It drives me crazy because they look down at me for taking medication for my depression OCD. They say I should just be happier. Oh wow, those sound like really assholes. I remember having skin being ripped from my arm to mutate it. I had a disease like encephalitis, but one that the doctors at UCS, Stanford, and Emory had not seen before, that torched my immune system and motor functions when I was very young. To this day, I'm 27 now, I have no idea what I had, what happened with that mutated part of me, or why I made a full recovery. My parents don't know either. Redditors have suggested I call the hospitals and find my records. I will try to do that, but that's from over 25 years ago. Ooh, I have another one. When I was around 7, I used to go to my cousin's house with my sister and play in their basement. Sometimes we would play hide and go seek. One time it was my turn to hide, so I hid in one of their closets that was filled with clothes and random stuff. Only, it wasn't random stuff. It was quite a few bags filled of money. I never said anything to anyone at the time, but it always stuck with me. As I got older, I began to question why my uncle had a video store in Philadelphia years after all the video stores went out of business. I also remember him going out for a run with a briefcase. That sounds like someone was in the mob. Alright, that's enough of this thread. Oh wow, this is pretty long.